Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be dealing with all the Bears trade rumors that are swirling all over the place. We're going to be talking about the grinded out Blackhawks and the inconsistent Bulls and whatever baseball news that there is around. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So they are going to be starting the season. So check it out at icehogs.com. Get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, and sign up for the AHL TV package and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Hey, Alex, how are you post NFL season?
Cold. Very, very, very cold.
Yeah, so those of you that listen outside of Chicago, we hate you. We don't really hate you, but we're jealous of you because in Chicago right now, I went and shoveled this morning. I do my house, my neighbors, a couple door down neighbor, and then an across the street neighbor. And it was -2 this morning when I went out to shovel. -2.
Ugh. Yeah, I was out at a friend's last night at his apartment, and I left his apartment about 11:45. And, there's like an apartment complex, a parking lot, and then the street behind it where I parked my car. My friend ended up driving me and all my other friends to where we parked so we didn't have to walk in the cold. And even so, going from his apartment on the second floor down the stairs to his car, we were outside for maybe, I don't know, 15 seconds, and I wanted to die. It was so awful.
Yeah, it was. So I bundled up like insanely. So I had on, so don't judge me here. When I was in high school, starter jackets were super popular. The ones with like the kangaroo like belly pouch.
You mean the stereotypical jock jacket?
Yeah, so those were super popular. And I was like, you know what? Nostalgia. I really want a Bears one. So maybe a year ago, I went on eBay and bought one. And I wear it regularly now because it's stupid warm. So anyway, I have a hooded sweatshirt on with the jacket over it. I put a rob-a-bank ski mask on. And then I have like this fleece like hood thing that goes over it that you can like bunch up so it covers anything that's exposed. And then 2 pairs of gloves and went outside, and my head was so warm I started sweating. But the crazy part is as the sweat was beating down and it going to the part where it was exposed from the ski mask, my sweat beads were freezing.
Yeah.
I was like, this is terrible. This is terrible.
That sounds awful. I mean, I know people who shoveled, and I couldn't imagine shoveling in this weather. I mean, at least like a few weeks ago, it was easier to shovel when it wasn't quite as bitterly cold. But this, ugh. I give you a lot of credit for doing it. But the thing is, you want to get it shoveled because when that snow falls on the ground, it's so cold it just freezes. So it's like an uneven layer of cement of snow. It's so dang cold.
Yeah, I mean, what happens if you don't, those of you that don't have snow, if you don't shovel it right away, and if it melts in the sun a little bit and then freezes when the sun goes down, then it's just ice. And you have to basically scrape it off or pour salt all over the place to get it to melt. Either way, it's gross. Just you got to shovel it before it freezes. And if I would have waited to now, it would have been a balmy 1 degree. So right now, as we're recording, it's 1 degree, and then it's going to warm up by tomorrow afternoon to 14 degrees.
Oh, heat wave is coming.
Yeah. So
Heat wave. I got one of those situations where in the shower, you know how like the showers have like the glass tile window that you can't really see through. It's like translucent.
Yeah.
It's at that point where like half of it is a block of glass, half of it is a block of ice. So when I get in the shower, I like crank it up really hot to where it's like steamy hot. And then before I get in, I kind of watch that half wall of ice just slowly melt away.
Yeah, winter. And you know what? I think it's just like the universe telling us you've had a pretty easy winter the last couple seasons. We're reminding you that this is Chicago and winter does suck.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you think about it, winter hasn't done much until February. We've been spending much of the time saying, oh, it hasn't snowed much. It hasn't been Arctic cold. And then February showed up and it was like, well, yeah, you got to make up for all that lost time. So here you go. Here's several feet of snow. Here's bitter cold at the same time. Enjoy.
They're like, we're wrapping up that 1 year of misery, starting with the COVID shutdown, which was beginning of March. So like, we will end this with snow and misery.
I mean, why not? Why not, right?
So where do you want to start today?
Well, I've been really itching to talk some baseball, and I think since pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting very soon, it's kind of the topic I want to talk about most.
All right, let's go in. Do you want to talk White Sox or do you want to talk Cubs?
Well, I got plenty of Cubs thoughts, so we could start with White Sox first, and then we could get into Cubs. Because I know there hasn't been a lot going on with Sox other than they're about to report to camp.
Yeah, by the time we record the next episode, pitchers and catchers will have reported. I think for every team. I think so. We're recording this Sunday. I think everybody's reporting Wednesday or Thursday. So, yeah, I mean we're there. As far as the White Sox, Michael Kopech is going to start on the. I mean, assuming nothing crazy happens, Michael Kopech is going to be on the big league roster. He's not going to start in the minors.
Yeah, because wasn't there a lot of talk that he was going to start in the minors, and then they kind of said no to that?
Yeah, so I guess he's going to be on a pitch count, but he's going to be on the majors, and they're going to work his way back to a starter. So he's going to start in the bullpen,
which makes sense.
Yeah, so that's that's I guess if you're gonna have him on a pitch count, it's probably better to be able to control him at the big league level.
I mean, it's kind of you can go back and forth on the whole thing because on one hand you'd love to see him in the majors again, and you feel like you have your first eye on what he's doing because you could be pitching in the minors and obviously have all your people down in the minors. It's just, it's slightly easier when you're actually pitching, keeping track of him in the majors. But, at the same time, he hasn't pitched in the majors since he got hurt, which was 2018. And you can't help but wonder what would be better for him. I'm not the expert, so I can't really say. But, I guess if they're going to be working him back on the major league level, who am I to judge? I suppose, and you'll at least get to see him in spring training as well when there's really no pressure on him. So, at least he'll have all of spring to be able to work back into the routine as well. I
mean, I guess another way to look at it is, first of all, I'm not going to either way, starting in the minors or starting at the bigs. I'm not going to be nitpicky about that because how much precedence is there? The guy hasn't played since, the 2018 season.
Right.
So what kind of precedence is there that a guy that you have actual expectations for missing that much time and then where to play them? But I think COVID probably does factor into this, because if we have another outbreak, they're probably going to cancel the minor league season or truncate it or suspend it. Whereas then, you can keep somebody with the active roster on which, you're going to find a way to play the major league schedule. So that might have some factoring into it too. But, I think probably the bigger reason is just being able to keep, the closest eye on him as far as his health, as far as, the medical staff, and keep an eye on him as far as his progress and his health.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point about the whole COVID thing, and you always ask yourself, how much time would even be enough in the minors? Would it be a few weeks? Would it be a month? I mean, at least if he's up in the majors, you're not worrying about him going back and forth. You're at least having him on the roster, and if you slowly work his way up, then, the only way I would really judge this as a negative is if they just threw him right back into the starting rotation, which, I mean, again, I'm not the expert, but I would not think that would be the wise thing to do. So I think they're at least handling it right from like a pitching perspective, where you're not throwing him back into the fire of a starter. You're going to start him in the bullpen. And if you want me to be completely honest, I think in the long run, I think Kopech's going to be a reliever in the long run. But that's just how I see him now. Things could change. You never know. I'm not saying he's not going to be moved back to the rotation. I just think career-wise, in the long run, he's going to be a reliever. That's just my opinion.
And then one more thing to factor in is, he's had some mental health issues going through his divorce and everything. I mean, it might be beneficial for the guy to be able to start in the bigs and then stay with his teammates and not have that transition of physical transition of moving locations and the mental transition of going from the minors to the majors and switching teammates and readjusting there. It might be just the routine of it might be better for him overall too.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point. I agree.
Another thing I wanted to bring up is I got an earful from Gary that we were not angry enough at the White Sox for being cheap, and we weren't angry enough that the PECOTA projections for the White Sox don't have them as being that good. And he's got a point on both of them. I mean, the White Sox going through that article where they essentially just only spent what they paired off in salary from last year. And, compared to teams in the top 10 in salary, there's a ton of money that they could move up to get into the top 10, and they haven't. They've chosen to kind of stand pat, and I mean, as a White Sox fans, it's got to be frustrating, where you could have made a big splash, like signing Ozuna, who in a pinch could play outfield, but probably better off as a DH, and easily picked up his salary and made this team that much better.
Well, when I look at this situation, I mean, this is how I honestly see it. I still think that, I mean, at the end of the day, I still think this team is going to be really stinking good. So I wouldn't want to complain too much. I get it. I get the frustration. I do. And for me, looking at the whole situation, it's not really about the actual dollars in terms of what's on paper, what's on the payroll, whatever. I just look at it more from a player perspective. Like, regardless of what Nelson Cruz or what Michael Brantley or someone like that costs, I look at that as, you really could have made your lineup bulletproof if you would have landed one of those guys. And I definitely get the frustration there. And, I also do think that they might have, they should have gone and maybe gotten another depth piece or two, because I think if there is one Achilles heel to this team, we'll see how much it actually affects them. But I just don't think they have enough depth. They could have gotten another starter. They could, if they would have gotten another starter and a DH, like a legitimate DH, then I think you would have called it a really good offseason. And even so, I mean, you got one of the best relievers in baseball, and you traded for Lance Lynn. Those are two very, very good moves. It's not the moves that they made, it's the moves that they didn't make. You know, I'm not going to judge any of the moves they actually made in a negative light. It's just...
No, it's the fact that, so there's 30 teams in MLB. You know where the White Sox rank in salary for 2021?
Middle, slightly lower half.
They are dead in the middle. They're 15th.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So in order to get into the top 10, they would have to spend another $31+ million. So they would have to, more than 20% of their salary go up in order to get into the top 10.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't even want to, I mean, do we really care about where they are compared to other teams in terms of salary?
No, I mean, the point, I don't mean it like, oh, you have to spend money in order to win, because clearly they weren't one of the high spenders last year and they did well. You look at Oakland and they continue to do well, and their payroll this year is under $60 million. So it's not necessarily like you have to spend to win, but when you are a big market team and you have some holes that are questionable, like your DH spot, where it's looking like you're going to be relying on somebody who's never even taken at bat in AA or higher, to helm that. I think you could have brought in a veteran and spent the money, and it's the fact
they
that
should have.
The fact that they
really
did.
should have gotten a DH. If Gary is really upset about them not getting a DH, I completely understand. So Gary, if you're listening, I totally get why you'd be upset about that. Trust me.
I mean, because without moving up, you could have easily brought in. You could have afforded to bring in a veteran DH.
You could have brought in Michael Brantley. You could have definitely brought in Michael Brantley.
Like even if you could have even brought in a Marcell Ozuna, where you actually have a legit guy. But you could have, if you're not going to do that, still bring in somebody. Even if you think like, oh, Vaughn's going to be our future, I don't want to bring in somebody long term. This would have been the year. There's so many veterans that are taking 1 or 2 year deals because of the COVID issue, and
though,
bring in a guy for where you like, okay, you know what? We're not married to him. Let's bring him in for short term. And if Vaughn beats him out, then whoop-de-doo. Okay.
Even so though, like if you have a chance to bring in somebody long term and established talent, wouldn't you want that? I mean, look, I'm not writing off Vaughn or anything, but on the major league level, he hasn't proven anything yet. You could say, you know what, let's just jump and get something legit right now, or put all our stock into what we're growing. And again, I can't say this enough. I think the White Sox have grown some unbelievable talent here, and it could end up being all they need to have success. But there's a risk to it. I think there is a risk to doing it the way the White Sox are. It could pay off. I'm not saying it won't, but I just think there was room, regardless of how much you're spending, regardless of where you are compared to other teams in payroll, there was room to add more established talent across the board. And at the end of the day, you got to say to yourself, if this is truly World Series or bust, then why not go all out and bring in some established guys, even if it might, quote unquote, run into some plans that you have with prospects? Because until they prove something, prospects are prospects. We know Marcell Ozuna can hit. We know Nelson Cruz can hit. Granted, Nelson Cruz might be one of those Edwin Encarnacion types where he just falls off a cliff at his age. But even so, I think it's fair to say that Nelson Cruz could give you one more year at least of some good production. So I get the frustration. I totally do on that front.
If it's not going to put you in a financial situation like going over the luxury tax threshold or preventing you from getting international free agents, etc. I don't see the issue with having having somebody established and somebody from the farm system butting up against each other. That's a good problem to have. You can work with that. Like you can, if Vaughn goes down to the minors and tears it up and causes you to have an issue, like, oh man, we've got Ozuna who's doing well, and we've got Vaughn, stuck behind him. You can work with that. Where you can't work with is if Vaughn comes up and even if he does well but goes into a young ball player slump and needs time to work himself out, what do you do there? Because then it's just like, oh, well, we got a kid that's struggling. What are we going to do? You're going to put in who's going to be your DH? One of your utility men? It just seems like that could have been a better established protocol of bringing in a veteran.
And it would have been one thing if this was last year, because last year you were still trying to kind of take that next step. Yeah, you started spending on free agents last year, but, even so, you could say, okay, we've been in this rebuild. We're looking to take that step towards legitimacy. So we're kind of evaluating what we have. But you're at the point now where you're like, it's World Series or bust. We have heard that a number of times. And you know what? Think of it this way, too. If you bring in some established guys that are helping you win now, but you still have some big-time prospects, and you want to shore up your team for a World Series run like the Cubs did a few years ago, then you have trade chips down there.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely, because you don't know when in the middle of a season you're going to run into an injury or somebody just not living up to what your expectations were. And if you've got trade chips, you use them to try to win. And again, nobody's saying you have to throw all the money at everything because, you have the Dodgers who are spending more than $100 million more than you are this year. Nobody says that, but if you have holes and this is your window right now, go for it. The Cubs did. I mean, if you look at what the Cubs did during that window that they had, I mean, I guess technically they're still in that window, but ish. Is if you look at our lifetime of Cubs fandom, you'd have to call that window a success. Obviously, they won a World Series and NLCSs and playoffs every year. You're like, okay, success. But if you look at it based on our expectations of when we saw that core come up, in some ways you're disappointed. You're like, oh, okay, we got a World Series, but I think we had a lot of those years that we were in the playoffs, you didn't feel like we could have won the World Series.
I mean, the years you felt like you could have won were like 15, 16, and that was really the main ones.
And then after that, sure, you made the playoffs and you were a tough team to beat, but you didn't get that expectation like, oh man, I could feel it in the air. Like this is a team that could do it.
Right.
So on some levels, you feel a little disappointed. You're like, man, it would have been nice to get to a couple World Series, at least get there. Even if you lose. But, and I think just the fact that we haven't had a World Series in our lifetimes before that, our lifetimes combined before that, our lifetimes combined plus 60%, that made it, if we were a team that had multiple World Series, I would say that, yeah, we could probably consider that, a little bit of a disappointment because, we only had 1, maybe 2 years where we thought we could have done it. And the White Sox are just entering this window and you want them to optimize it. Don't go, you know what? Last year we were successful. This year will be, our first year of already having waded in the water of the playoffs. Just try to win it every year. Now that you've made it, every year should be go for it. And
especially now.
Yeah.
Especially now when you have a pretty winnable division and that a lot of the teams are kind of financially handcuffed. I mean, look at the rest of the division. You have 2 rebuilding teams in the Tigers and the Royals. You have your big competitor in the Twins. And then outside that, you have a few contending teams like the Yankees, maybe the Blue Jays, the Rays. Other than that, I mean...
You're in a division with Cleveland, whose payroll for the entire team for the entire year is $3.5 million less than what Trevor Bauer's making this year.
Yeah, isn't that nuts? I mean, that's really nuts when you think about it. So, yeah, your window might be open for a while because I think this White Sox core will be around and doing great things for a while. Probably longer than the Cubs because this talent the ceiling of this talent looks incredibly good. But your prime window is like your absolute best prime window is right now.
Yeah, and it's when you can add players with just money and not have to worry about trying to trade player or from your farm system to get those players. Is you just sign them to money, and it's not even bank breaking money because it's been a buyer's market this offseason.
Exactly, and I still think they're one of the favorites in the American League, and this might all not mean anything when they're winning the pennant and going to the World Series this year. But, for now, you just wish they could have done a little more. And I don't think that this team is going to lack talent. My biggest concern for them is, what if somebody gets hurt? Then who's the next man up in a key spot? You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. But the one last thing I wanted to talk about the White Sox is I heard an interview with, I think it was Chuck Garfien with Tim Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you heard it.
I did not know.
So in it, they were asking him about his thoughts about the new manager, Tony LaRussa. And he insinuated that he's never talked to him. Pitchers and catchers report in a couple of days. And one of your star players, probably the heart and soul of your team, has never met the new manager. And there's already been some bad feelings about the hire. It doesn't sound like, he was a fan. And he said, I'm willing to give it a chance. But it clearly sounds like he's not a fan.
See, that's the thing you don't want to hear. I'm willing to give it a chance about your manager.
And it's only because of his, record as being a successful manager. But, it seems like this was a Jerry decision and he shoved it down everybody's throats without input.
It literally was his decision. He was the only one that wanted Tony LaRussa, and he's the owner. He's the head honcho. If he tells Rick Hahn to hire Tony LaRussa, then you hire Tony LaRussa.
And that's bad business. Jerry is not a baseball guy. He's not a baseball guy. And he's going to try to make amends for things and try to do right before he dies. But you know what? Do right by your fans. Do right by your players.
What I don't get is why this is suddenly a thing now. Why does Jerry wait like 30 plus years after the fact to make amends?
Because he could.
Why suddenly now?
Well, because LaRussa is cheap to get now.
Well, and I guess also because, Jerry doesn't have much time left and he probably wants to, get that done, I suppose. I just, if there is really one stain on this offseason for the White Sox, if it's not adding more depth or more needed position players, it's that stupid ass hire. Now, I've said before that the hire might not mean much to their success in the long run. That's kind of yet to be seen because the everyday stuff, like on the manager field, like just being in-game manager, he shouldn't have any problem with that. It's everything else. But again, I think this team is talented enough to overcome that. But still, I mean, regardless, when they announced that they were hiring Tony LaRussa, everyone was just tearing their hair out on the South Side. And there's so many reasons not to do that. And you had other candidates that were available that were clearly more fitting for you.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Anderson probably is. He's very vocal and very passionate. And it's not surprising that he has issue with the hire. And it's sad that nobody reached out and was like, you know what, I'm going to bridge this gap here. And I mean, when did the hire take place?
Wasn't it like late November? It was not far after the season.
So how many months? So it's been months and months. And if I was Tony LaRussa, I would be calling the stars of the team and being like, hey, you know, and trying to establish some rapport.
You would think.
And the fact that you have the heart and soul of your team who obviously has issue with this, and nobody thought to, you know, try to squash this beef or potential beef. That's crazy that the first time they're going to meet and talk is when players report.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane to me.
Hopefully everything goes okay and they can start working together in a civil manner, obviously, because you want that for what's best for the team. But yeah, no, it is kind of crazy that they haven't talked yet.
It's just mind-boggling, honestly.
It's just it's still unbelievable that we're going to see Tony LaRussa manage a Major League Baseball game in 2021. And, you know, I remember all those reports about Tony LaRussa coming out. Like, you know, the rumors, they're looking at Tony LaRussa, blah, blah, blah. And I should have known better because I kept saying, no, come on, no, there's no way, there's no way. And then my White Sox fan friend Brad from college texts me in all caps, fuck, with a bunch of exclamation points. And then I see under that text is the picture of Tony LaRussa in a White Sox uniform. And like I had to do a double take. And, you know, I'm working from home, so I was just on my computer working. So I immediately brought up the radio.com act to put on 670 The Score. And they're just all like, yep, they hired Tony LaRussa. And I was just like, wow, you didn't go after AJ Hinch or some of the other guys that were out there? You went for Tony LaRussa? And then you heard about the press conference. You heard about Rick Hahn being visibly upset. So it was just that whole saga. And the funny thing is, I've almost forgotten about that. And then when somebody mentions it or I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, Tony LaRussa's their manager now.
All right.
I know. Well, didn't Gary bring up Pacoda? Because I want to say something about that real quick.
So, I mean, I told him, I was like, that one doesn't bug me. It's not like these computer projections are being biased against the White Sox, and they don't matter. You know, that's why you play the game.
Yeah, don't worry too much about Pacoda. Is my yearly message to people. Don't worry about them.
Don't hang your hat on it if they project you to be awesome, because there's plenty of room to not be awesome, and don't hang be sad about if they project you to be bad, because that's why you play the games.
Players have good years, players have bad years. Players get hurt, players get traded. Other teams' players get hurt, traded, or have career or bad years.
Yeah, it's so they don't matter. It's just something to talk about when there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah. So I say don't even put any stock into it.
Yeah, so I'm looking. What were the Pacoda projections?
It was 83 wins for the Sox, 85 for the Cubs.
No, I'm looking for last year just to...
Oh, okay. Because I remember in 2019, the Cubs were projected at like 80 wins, and Cubs fans freaked out. And they won 84 games. So, suck on that, Pacoda.
Yeah, it's not loading, but it doesn't matter. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't impact anything. It's not like they calculate the Pacoda projections into your actual win totals.
Who cares? Sean says as he feverishly refreshes his page.
Maybe they'll change it. Maybe they'll change it. So, Cubs. We have a new starting pitcher.
An old pal, an old friend, an old bearded friend.
Jake, who's not even that old.
No, he's like 34, 35.
Yeah, like he's much younger than I.
Well,
Whoa,
yeah.
whoa. But so they bring him in, which is supposed to be a $6 million deal.
He took less to come back here, just for the record.
He did. I think they were expecting him to sign a $6.5 to $7 million deal.
Yeah, right. I don't know how much he was really worth, considering he's been injured the past few years and hasn't really pitched that well.
No, but I think the thing is you look at him as somebody that could, can pitch 200 innings.
Absolutely. And before we go into kind of the details about what Arrieta is now, I'm going to say this. People were wondering, oh, you're going to bring back Jake Arrieta for that, but not John Lester. I don't know what's going to happen this coming year. I could be wrong. Projections could be wrong. But I think the logic is that you might be able to squeeze more out of Arrieta at this point than John Lester. Because keep in mind that John Lester is older. He's got a lot more miles on that arm. Jake Arrieta doesn't throw as hard anymore, but he could at least still throw in the 90s, and John Lester can't really do that. And Arrieta, I think, can still put a bit more movement on those pitches. I just think that Arrieta's upside is a bit larger going forward than John Lester. So if you want to try to make sense of that, that's kind of where I am with that. That's my thinking behind it.
And it's funny, a lot of the takes that I don't know why I read the comments on like when they have like the Facebook articles from like NBC Sports or whatever.
Don't.
Oh my god.
Don't.
It's
oh my god.
those
are like the cesspool of cesspools. I used to read those all the time. Now I've muted like CSN Chicago and 670 The Score, so I don't click on those damn comments.
You know what?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's not even like the troll comments. Like I can deal with those because you're like, well, it's the internet, and to me, the ones that are just so insanely stupid, you're like, oh man, we're bringing back Arrieta, and like he's Cy Young Arrieta, like that guy doesn't exist anymore.
No, we know that. We know that.
This isn't. Oh yeah, we're retooling to win a World Series with Arrieta. Jake Arrieta is a guy that has familiarity with this team and vice versa. And they can have him at an affordable price, and he's an innings eater. And the fact is that in this day and age, somebody that can eat innings is a valuable commodity.
Yes.
And so that's why they're bringing him back. He is not a front-end starter. And, man, he might be your number 3 starter.
He might be.
I just thought about that. That is like like anticipating a train wreck. Jake Arrieta could be your number 3 starter.
Yeah, he could.
Oof.
He could.
Oh man. Ooh.
I mean, Sean, you look at the pitching rotation. We're essentially trying to capture lightning in a bottle here. When you think about it, because it's a safe bet, I think, that Kyle Hendricks is going to be good. There's no reason for me to doubt that he will be. And then you got Zach Davies, who's typically a lower-end rotation guy. But, for a lower-end rotation guy, he's pretty good. But he's probably going to be your 2 starter.
He's absolutely going to be your 2. I mean, he's your second best starting pitcher right now.
And then you got Jake Arrieta, who is a shell of his former self, but, I think there is room for him to at least be serviceable. I think the ceiling is serviceable with him.
So, the 2020 projections, do you want the Steamer projections, Zip projections, RotoChamp?
Well, I know the Steamer projections are pretty bleak.
So RotoChamp is less bleak. They have him 160 innings, 8-10 record, 4.39 ERA, 1.38 WHIP, 133 Ks to 57 walks.
What was the ERA? I'm sorry.
4.39.
See, if he pitched to a 4.39 ERA, that would be, I think, in my opinion, kind of what you can ask for.
Yeah, I mean, that's... I mean, you can live with that. I mean, I see...
Honestly, if he pitched a 4.20 ERA, I'd be thrilled.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you have to be happy with being able to get serviceable out of him.
Right, exactly. And like you said, innings, and he can do that. Okay, so some of the other numbers.
I clicked off because I'm now on a NBC Sports Chicago article projecting the Cubs rotation.
Okay.
They're projecting the rotation to be number 1, Kyle Hendricks.
Right.
Number 2, Jake Arrieta.
Okay.
Number 3, Zach Davies.
Okay.
Number 4, Trevor Williams.
Sounds right.
Number 5, Alec Mills.
No Adbert Alzolay, huh?
They have him as the 6th starter. I don't know if that means they think they'll go with 6 or if he's the long man.
I mean, look, it's if Adbert Alzolay is still considered one of your top prospects, I think you got to take the training wheels off this year and say, you know what? Go out there every 5 days. Let us see what you can do.
I would think so.
I think Alec Mills is fine as a spot starter long reliever, frankly.
I would agree. And we had sort of penciled him in up until this point of as being a starter. And who knows who's healthy and who's not, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Adbert Alzolay is he's had a history of injuries, but again, eventually you're going to have to take the training wheels off, and I think the stuff is very promising with him. I really do. He pitched some really nice games last year. He had a start against the Cardinals. He was looking really good, like 95 on the fastball, had really good movement on the breaker. So I would pencil him in down towards the bottom. And yeah, Trevor Williams is pretty much where I had him, number 4. And Trevor Williams is a guy who's had success, but recently has not. You're taking a kind of a gamble with him, not an expensive one, but you're entrusting him to take a spot in the rotation. I mean, again, I really only feel good about Kyle Hendricks and decently good about Zach Davies actually putting up some pretty good numbers. If Jake Arrieta puts up mediocre, serviceable numbers, great. With Trevor Williams, I want him to do well. I'm just not really betting on it. I mean, at least the nice thing, too, about Jake Arrieta is, as I mentioned earlier, at least you have someone that could throw over 90 miles an hour. Granted, it's like a 92 miles an hour, but still, you don't have a lot of that in this rotation, or on this staff even. That's one of the problems with the Cubs pitching staff, not only this year, but the past several years. It feels like the Cubs are the only team in baseball that doesn't have a nice collection of 98, 99 triple-digit flamethrowers.
Yeah, they don't really have that guy.
It's a bunch of soft tossers.
So here's full projections.
Okay.
So there's the bat, ATC, depth charts, steamer, zips. So first I'll go with K per 9. They range from 6.47 to 7.48.
Okay, so I mean that's pretty much what he's been doing in Philly.
Yeah, most of them have it. Yeah, better than last year, but a little worse than the other years. So around 7 per 9. Walks per 9, they have him up a tick from Philly, so around 3 1/3 to 3 1/2.
Okay.
Home runs per 9, they have them up a tick, more than a tick.
Well, we'll see.
They have them about
They're deadening the balls. We'll see.
1.4 home runs per 9. They have them with a BABIP around 300. LOB percent right around 70, which is about what you saw in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
ERA ranging from 4.6 to 5.11, and a WAR of about 1, a little under 1. So, I mean, in line for a back end rotation pitcher, but for your number 2 or number 3,
Yeah.
they have the FIPS ranging from about a 5 FIP.
Well, if you want to see another interesting stat that I've mentioned before with Jake Arrieta, is that he's clearly trying to adjust his game to be a less miss-bat, more contact pitcher. If you look at his pitch selection and you look at kind of what he throws now compared to what he did like in his Cy Young season and his All-Star season in 2016, AKA when he was really, really good, you see that he's throwing more changeups and off-speed pitches. When he was a Cub, he was throwing a changeup maybe 4 or 5% of the time. The past 2 years, he's throwing them like 17, 18% of the time. So you're seeing that percentage usage of changeups going up. So I think that you're going to see him continue to try to adjust his game to get contact outs. And, he's got a pretty good defense around him, so that might benefit him a little bit. We saw John Lester try to be that type of guy, kind of the guy that grinds away and gets outs via contact. So I'm not expecting a lot of missed bats here, that's for sure. So, that is one interesting trend that we have seen is more usage of those types of pitches. And, obviously, naturally, the more contact you have against you, then the more likely that there is going to be hits against you and runs against you, unless, you're really good at controlling it like a Greg Maddux or even a Kyle Hendricks, where Jake Arrieta, he's going to get some hard hit balls against him at this point. I mean, we've seen it the past few years. But if you could try to adjust his game where he's trying to turn more of those batted balls into outs, you just hope he can do it somewhat effectively.
And I'm reading now that the Cubs are looking to add a veteran lefty second baseman to the roster.
Well, you know what I say about that? Just bring back Jason Kipnis.
That's what that's what I was about to say. I was like, based on who's out there, and you could try to trade for somebody, but what do you have to trade? You're trying to build for the future. You don't really want to trade for a veteran lefty second baseman when you're hoping Nico is the future.
I mean, who's even on the market,
Yeah, I mean, I think so it's either Jason Kipnis, Eric Sogard, Neil Walker.
Jason Kipnis is probably going to give you the most out of those three at this point.
And you know him as a person now.
Yeah, exactly. And he seemed like a very well-respected guy in the clubhouse. So why not bring him back?
Yeah, so I mean, that would be logical to me. You're not gonna have to pay him a lot because he's just sitting there.
No, he'll be dirt cheap.
Yeah, so I mean, you give it for veteran minimum money.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know. I just, that seems logical. And then they're looking for relief pitchers.
There's one guy I wrote about for Cubby's Crib today. The article hasn't come out yet, but there is a guy out there that I think they should look at. Do you have any guess to who it is?
Robertson?
No, but his name has been mentioned.
Who are you thinking?
I'll give you a hint before I say it. I just want you to try to guess because I'm evil like that. Former closer for the St. Louis Cardinals. Throws pretty damn hard. Had a really good rejuvenated year last year.
And
no, it's not Jason Mott. I have a feeling you know who I'm talking about, but you can't remember the name.
Ryan Helsley?
No.
I don't know.
Trevor Rosenthal.
Oh, okay.
Because he had a really good year last year, and he's still throwing 98, 99, 100. And he's still out there.
I mean, we'll see. I don't know how much money the Cubs have to throw around.
He can't possibly cost that much at this point. And you need someone who can throw gas. He throws gas. You need more velocity.
Yeah, I did read that they are looking to see what David Robertson has in the tank.
And that's fine too. I mean, if they said they were going to bring in David Robertson, I say, you know what? He's got a really good resume. You know, maybe that'll help out. The other question too is they haven't talked about Jeremy Jeffress at all. Now, I do want to talk quickly about that. If it were up to me, I would say, yeah, I'm going to spend what little money he costs and bring him back, because clearly he hasn't signed yet, so he's not going to cost all that much. He was very good last year. I will say this with him, I do worry about the regression a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to see regression from him. But you look at what they have, and you're like, is he going to be worse than what you have? I mean, I think at worst he's on par.
I mean, do you really trust Craig Kimbrell right now, even though he did show a little sign of life last year in the second half of that brief season? I'm not so sure.
No, I don't. I don't really trust anybody. So at least Jeffress, you saw good things, but even if you see regression, who in your bullpen are you like super stoked about that he's going to be stealing innings from?
I mean, honestly, if I look at the reliever I trust most right now, it's probably Rowan Wick. I mean, think about it. You don't really trust Kimbrell that much. Jeffress currently isn't on the roster. I mean, who else do you have? You have Brad Wick, who spent most of last year hurt.
Well,
what the hell do they even have other than that
Here
right
is their
now?
current 25-man roster for pitchers.
Okay.
Corey Abbott, Jason Adam, Adbert Alzolay, Andrew Chafin, Zach Davies, Gray Fenter, Kyle Hendricks, Jonathan Holder, Craig Kimbrell, Brendan Little, Dylan Maples, Braylon Marquez, Tyson Miller, Alec Mills, James Norwood, Manuel Rodriguez, Kyle Ryan, Justin Steele, Cole Stewart, Robert Stork, Keegan Thompson, Dwayne Underwood Jr., Rowan Wick, Brad Wick, Trevor Williams, Dan Winkler, and I guess they haven't updated it to put Jake Arrieta yet. So who in that list are you just like, man, how are we going to bring in a Jeremy Jeffress to take a spot from him? Like, you know?
I mean, right now, of all those guys you read in terms of bullpen, I'm like, okay, Rowan Wick, Andrew Chafin, maybe Craig Kimbrell, kind of Dan Winkler, and that's about it. That's not a lot.
And
that's like 2.5 or 2 2/3 at best.
And how many lefties did you name?
Did I even name any lefties?
Nope. So for me, I would bring in as many arms as possible and just see who performs the best. I mean, with closers, they kind of just, how often do middle relievers have consistently good careers year in and year out?
Not many. It's a very, very short list of the many relievers. I mean, we see more often than ever relievers who are great one year, then terrible the next year, or you have relievers who are absolutely dominant for 3-4 years at the most, and then they just fall off a cliff.
So my thinking is you just bring in as many guys as you can that have like Jeffers has a decent track record with you. Bring them in, and then when you go through spring training, see who pitches the best, and then bring those guys aboard. That's your best possibility of building a semi-decent bullpen.
And again, nobody out there is going to break the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because I see a team with a starting lineup that can win, but everything else is really shaky.
Yep.
Your bullpen is questionable. Your starting rotation is questionable. Even your position depth is kind of questionable. Now, they brought in the guy from the Mets, and Matt Duffy might actually be a sneaky good depth piece as well. And then you're hoping that your backup catcher in Austin Romine can just, do backup catcher things, and maybe eventually you see Miguel Amaya, but I'm not really counting on Miguel Amaya playing anytime soon. But, I mean, again, your starting lineup.
Yeah, Miguel Amaya is like, what, 21
great.
years old?
Yeah, he's not very old.
He's a kid.
Yeah. I want to share something with you really quick that I wrote about the core for Cubby's Crib.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna be plugging Cubby's Crib again. I don't know if you saw me post. Well, you probably didn't. But I wrote a projection, my own personal ideal projection for bounce back years for the four core guys. So that's Rizzo, Bryant, Contreras, and Baez. Because, look, this is the way I see it. I don't think they're all going to have career worst years 2 years in a row. I think it's a safe bet that for the most part they will play to their normal level in a normal season if they're healthy. Would you agree or disagree with that?
You would think. Mathematically, you'd think.
Yeah, you would think. Now, of course, there's concerns of, is Chris Bryant, is he truly damaged goods? Is there more to those injuries than we know? But for guys like Baez, I think it was all mental. And if you look at Rizzo's stats, they're not as bad as you'd think. So basically, I kind of put together a little stat line for what I think they should ideally bounce back to. I kind of want to get your thoughts really quick.
Sure.
So for Baez, my ideal stat line for him is 278, 319, 520, 28 home runs, 838 OPS, and about a WRC plus of 110.
I mean, I could live with that.
So for Chris Bryant, if he returns to Chris Bryant-like form, 285, 380, 525, 30 home runs, 905 OPS, 138 WRC plus, and a walk rate of about 11.
Okay. I mean, that's doable.
For Rizzo, basically what he does almost every year, 278, 380, 510, 28 home runs, 890 OPS, 130 WRC plus, and a base on ball K ratio of about 0.8. I mean, that's typical Rizzo numbers.
Right? I mean, that is typical.
And then for Wilson Contreras, who, was still pretty good last year, but not quite as good as where he could be. I said ideal for him is about 270, 355, 480, 22 homers, 835 OPS, 120 WRC plus, and a walk rate of about 9.
I mean, I think my thing with them is we need more contact. We have guys that get on base, but I think we just need to have better contact. That's the problem. It's guys get on base, and it's home run or bust, really.
Yeah, and I agree. I definitely agree because there are holes in all the swings. When you get on base like you do and you slug like you do, it means you're laying off pitches and you're slugging certain pitches. But there are holes where they tend to miss a lot. And Rizzo is a pretty good contact guy, but Baez strikes out a lot. You have some holes in Contreras' swing, and you got some holes in Bryant's swing as well. Now,
some big ones last year.
Yes, very, very big ones last year. I'm still convinced he wasn't healthy, though. That's my
is I think I think these players together, it's a bad construct. I think you need to have contact hitters in there. If you could swap out a Tim Anderson for a Javi Baez, I think you're a better team.
Offensively, not defensively.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean, because Tim Anderson does make better contact. That's just flat facts.
Kind of a wash in the walk rate.
Yeah, no, neither walk. But Tim Anderson definitely does a much better job of making contact and shortening up, where Baez is always swinging for the fences. But here's one thing I will say. It's not a huge improvement because he's not a typical contact hitter and he does still strike out a bit. But if you look at what Jock Peterson has done the past few years, kind of, in his type of game, one big problem that we saw last year was the Cubs handling velocity and fastballs up. Schwarber really struggled with that. Jock Peterson is really good at handling the high heat. Like, statistically, he's much better. So you hope that Jock Peterson can kind of fill that void a little bit. He's not going to solve all the issues or even a sizable chunk of it, but at least if you can have a guy in there that can do a better job handling high heat and velocity in general, you hope that can do you some good.
I mean, regardless, I think this is going to be a better defensive team than they were last year. If for nothing else.
And they were already the Gold Glove winner collectively.
Yeah, is Jock Peterson is definitely a step up from Schwarber. So your outfield defense is going to be better. And now it's I mean, for me, it's, can you cut down on Baez's strikeouts? Can you get Chris Bryant to anywhere near where he was his first 4 years in the league? Does Rizzo stay healthy and put up his average numbers? Can you get Jason Hayward to continue to make hard contact consistently?
Well, let's look at best case scenario. Rizzo puts up typical Rizzo numbers. Chris Bryant puts up numbers like he had in 2017 and 2019. We're not getting that MVP back. I just don't think we are.
No.
But if we could get all-star level,
that's my thing is you're not going to get MVP Chris Bryant, but if you get all-star Chris Bryant,
you will definitely take it.
Yes. I don't expect the MVP voting Baez, but if we can get all-star Baez, and if we can get Jason Hayward to make hard contact and less on the ground hard contact, his problem is hits it on the ground hard to the second baseman. And that's the thing about hitting it hard to the second baseman. If you hit it hard to the third baseman or the shortstop, depending on where it is, you can run that out. It's real hard to run out something from the second baseman.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Now, the good thing about Jason Hayward is, if you look at his last 2 seasons in the majors, with the Cubs, I should say, if you look at his last 2 seasons collectively, you're seeing much more productive numbers than you saw early on. And don't look at batting average. Just don't look at that. Look at everything else. So, yeah, 255 batting average might seem like nothing to gawk at, considering you hit 259 and 270 and 17 and 18, but you got an OBP of 355, a slugging of 435, and an OPS of 789, an OPS plus of 106. Okay, so keep those numbers in mind right there, and then look at his first several years as a Cub, 16 to 18, 322 OBP, a 688 OPS, and an OPS plus of 81. Pretty big difference in those numbers.
Yeah, I think what I want to see from him is I want to see the hard hit rate continue to be good. I want to see him the spray chart to be all over the place.
When Jason Hayward is on, when he's having a good stretch, you see him go all over the place with the ball.
Right. And that's when he starts pulling it consistently, that's when you see him slump. I want to see him be able to hit it hard to the opposite field. And if we can get that consistently all year, even if the batting average isn't high, even if it's hit at somebody, he's having some bad BABIP luck, I want to just see him hit the ball hard all over the field.
Yeah. I mean, last year obviously was a very small sample size. It was 50 games, but you saw him bat 265, but a 392 OBP, slugged 456 and an OPS of 848, OPS plus of 129. He hasn't had an OPS north of 800 since 2012, and he hasn't had an OPS north of 840 since his rookie year, and he hasn't had an OPS plus north of 120 since his rookie year. So, and then, before that, you had him with an OPS plus of 100 in 2019 and a 772 OPS. So what I'm trying to say is it's been trending upward.
Absolutely. I'm not nearly as down on Jason Hayward as I was. And in fact, I'm not really even down. My concerns are way elsewhere. But if you're asking me what I would ideally want to see out of this team, that's the one thing that I would like to see that's realistic is continue to hit the ball hard all over the field. Baez and Bryant get all-star type numbers, and a little bit of return to form for Jock Peterson and repeat performance from Ian Happ.
That's another big thing is Ian Happ continuing to grow, because we saw some big steps last year and you want him to keep doing that.
He took the steps that we hoped. I mean, because you saw parallels between Kyle Schwarber and Ian Happ in their careers, where
yes,
a lot of promise, a lot of power, then some real tough times, struggles, and Ian Happ seems to have responded much better than Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, and I think too with Ian Happ is he's got more tools. I mean, I think Ian Happ is more athletic. He's obviously more versatile in the field, and I just think that he's got to give Kyle Schwarber credit. He has a good eye at the plate, but I think Ian Happ has an even better one. He's very good at taking walks.
I think I would say Kyle Schwarber has a better eye, but he also has sometimes, man, he sees that pitch and thinks it's something else, and he takes a big wild cut and miss. And
I think you could say maybe the pitch identity is better than just the eye.
Yeah.
If that's how you want to put it.
But I wish it was, of those two, I wished it would have been Kyle Schwarber be the one that was more successful. I think he's a much more beloved guy, not just I don't know about on the team, but in the community, I think he's a much more beloved guy. I think he's a warmer, friendlier guy.
Well, I will say this. Ian Happ does do an awful lot.
He just doesn't have the warm fuzzies.
Have you ever listened to his podcast?
Uh-uh.
It's really good. The Compound podcast. He's actually got a much bigger personality than you'd think.
Huh. Because when you listen to him in interviews and his interactions that you see with fans, like he just seems like just not interested.
Yeah, looks can be kind of deceiving. Try listening to his podcast. You'll really get kind of a sense of him. He's actually pretty entertaining.
I'll have to check that out.
But I think that I do agree that Kyle Schwarber, just being that World Series hero and like his personality, I do think that he is a bit more, I guess, quote, lovable in a way. But that only gets you so far. And I'll always be a huge fan of Kyle Schwarber. He was one of my favorites for a while, but I think Ian Happ has more potential to be a more complete player.
Absolutely. I mean, the defense is better there. He's faster, better base runner.
Yeah.
So obviously that, but the issue with what we're projecting or guessing would be best case scenario here is, do we see a best case scenario? Because last year we saw a worst case scenario.
And that's the crazy thing too. We saw worst case scenario with a lot of that crap, and they still won the division.
Yeah. But the thing is pitching staff last year was much better.
Oh yeah, much better.
And this year we're gonna need much closer to best case scenario in order to repeat that performance, because the pitching isn't there. You look at best case scenario pitching, and you probably have seen it. You talk about Rizzo being a consistent guy. I think Hendricks is, you know what you're going to get.
Hendricks is like the Rizzo of the Cubs pitching staff. You're not ever really worried about him because you're pretty confident in him.
Yeah, so other than the health issues, but I guess you see that with both of them. But you know what you're going to get there. Zach Davies, I think even you're going to kind of know what you're going to get.
Yeah. High 3s ERA type guy.
Yeah, it's what are you going to get from Arrieta? Probably let's call that a wash with John Lester. Maybe a slight uptick. Possibly. But let's call it, for all intents and purposes, a wash for John Lester.
Okay. All right.
So what was the rotation last year?
So the rotation last year
Hendricks, Darvish,
Mills, Lester, Hendricks, Darvish, Mills, Lester.
Chatwood?
Was there? Yeah, Chatwood.
All right, so Hendricks, wash with Hendricks, and then let's call Arrieta a wash with Lester, and Mills a wash with Mills. So then that leaves between Chatwood and Darvish. How are you comparing Davies and Williams or Alzolay?
Darvish was the Cy Young runner-up that can throw triple digits and has like 11 different pitches or 13 different pitches, however how much. So yeah, you are not getting that production back. And I mean, you can argue that Darvish was their MVP last year. I mean, every time he took the ball, he was going deep into ball games and just dominating. So, that right there is a lot of innings eaten and a lot of wins.
Mm-hmm. You have nobody that can do that.
Here's if they had Hendricks, Darvish, Arrieta, Williams, and like Alzolay, even just with Darvish, I'd feel a bit better.
Oh, absolutely. You would feel like, okay, we have an ace, and then we have a good sidekick, and then we can piece together between young guys and veterans. We can piece that together for the rest of but you don't have that ace.
Right.
Name the last World Series champion that didn't have an ace.
I mean, the Kansas City Royals in 2015 were somewhat of a hodgepodge, but that's the only thing I can think of.
It's a hard list to come by. Most of the time they have more than one ace. So maybe they could win the division, but they have 0% chance of winning the World Series in my opinion, based on being February for Valentine's Day. Who knows? Maybe Arrieta just finds a groove and does one of those old man comebacks.
Yeah, I mean, think about the rest of the division. Look at the other rotations. The Cardinals outside Jack Flaherty, what's their rotation like? I don't even know. What is Carlos Martinez still part of that team? I mean, who else is even on that rotation? Look at the Brewers. Nobody ever knows who the hell the Brewers are throwing out there. It's like Adrian Hauser and a bunch of other guys nobody's ever heard of.
So the Cardinals rotation is going to be, let's see. Wainwright, Flaherty,
Who's like 40.
Kwang Hyun Kim, Miles Mikolas,
Oh, yeah, he's still a thing.
and then candidates are Austin Gomberg, Daniel Ponce de Leon, Jake Woodford, and Johan Oviedo.
Every time I hear of Ponce de Leon, I think of George Costanza going, Ponce de Leon? I mean, that rotation, I mean, Jack Flaherty is really freaking good, but does that rotation really strike that much fear in you?
No, not really. Not really at all.
Now let's pull up the Brewers rotation.
Let's see.
Like, who's even there?
Brandon Woodruff.
Okay. He's pretty good.
Then Corbin Burns.
Okay. Feels like he's been there forever.
And then
Adrian Hauser's
Taiwan Walker.
Okay.
Number 4 is Josh Lindblom.
Okay.
And then 5 is Freddie Peralta.
Okay, so Brandon Woodruff is pretty dang good.
Yes.
Outside that, do they strike much fear in you?
No.
Then you look at the Reds rotation. They just lost Trevor Bauer. They still have Sonny Gray. But losing Trevor Bauer is a pretty big loss. And they have Luis Castillo, who's also pretty good. So you can argue the Reds, even if they're not favored, might have probably the best top rotation even without Trevor Bauer.
Yeah, they got Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo. 3 is Tyler Mahle.
Mm-hmm.
4 is Nick Lodolo. And 5 is Wade Miley.
Wade Miley. Yeah, that's right. He was there last year, too.
Yeah. So, they got 2 good pitchers. But then it just really falls off from there.
Mm-hmm. And don't even bother with the Pirates.
Oh, no. Now I want to know.
Actually, I am kind of curious. Because they don't have Chris Archer anymore. They don't have Trevor Williams anymore. Garrett Cole. Oh, wait.
Steven Brault.
Okay.
Chad Kuhl.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch Keller.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Brubaker.
Mm-hmm.
Will Crow.
Okay, then. I only know those guys because the Cubs play them so much. And even so, I don't know them that well. I just know their names. And I know that the Cubs have pretty much crushed them so far.
At first, when I started scanning, I thought it said Steve Brule.
Yeah.
I was like, awesome, Steve Brule. Might as well be pitching for the Pirates. So you're right. This all the pitching is concentrated into Southern California.
Pretty much.
So, again, you could win the division, but can you beat the Padres and the Dodgers?
I don't think you could beat the Dodgers. I don't think that you could beat... the Mets always find a way to Mets it up, but on paper right now, it looks like they have a pretty good team.
You know what's funny is we all know that Bobby Bonilla Day, that they're still paying Bobby Bonilla. Did you know they're also still paying Brett Saberhagen?
Yes. I did know that. It's funny.
To me, that's even funnier.
What a weird ass organization, man.
We're still paying guys that are 50 years old. But yeah, they'll mess it up. But just what's going to happen when you face Yu Darvish?
I don't want to think about that.
Is we all know that this city has, every time they cast somebody away, they have amazing performances against us.
Oh yeah.
So Yu Darvish is going to throw at least 2 perfect games against the Cubs this season.
With 27 strikeouts.
Yes. It's going to be the greatest single. Both of them are going to be tied for the greatest single game ever pitched. And you're just like, what the hell?
I was so hoping that Yu Darvish would throw a no-hitter in a Cub uniform. I really was. Who would have thought it would have been Alec Mills?
True.
And the best part is there's a picture of Alec Mills in the dugout with like a blank look on his face. He looks like Napoleon Dynamite.
My favorite one is I got to find the article. They probably changed it, but one organization, like some off-market newspaper, like it'd be like a Southtown Economist type newspaper. Somewhere else they posted an article about the no-hitter and put a picture of somebody else. It wasn't Alec Mills. And I was like, that's amazing. Is you don't even know which guy it is. Like it's such a guy that you're like Yu Darvish, you could clearly just look in the dugout. Which guy is Yu Darvish? Oh, duh, that guy. Like there's other pitchers where you just like, I recognize them because they're like, he's just the guy. He's just a guy. And you look, they just picked the wrong guy.
Yeah.
All right. Should we switch over to Bears a little bit?
Sure.
So tons of rumors floating around. The Wentz rumors are still there. Now the Derek Carr rumors are swirling around. Just a couple thoughts. One, Derek Carr has had a couple of good seasons under John Gruden. But you look at his career, do we think we're going to get the same production that John Gruden is getting out of him here with this organization?
He's a quarterback coming to the Bears, so that answer is no.
So if he's not going to be as good as the guy that you're trading for, then why are you trading for him? And if he's so good, why would the Raiders get rid of him? He's not demanding a trade. He's financially affordable. So it's not like a situation like Deshaun Watson where he's demanding his way out. And it's not like a situation like Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger where they're in a financial cap hit and he makes too much money. So those factors aren't there. So why in the world would they get rid of him unless he's not as good as other people might think he is? So I don't understand the desire for trading for Derek Carr because he's going to cost you a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind Derek Carr as a quarterback, but I don't want to give up an arm and a leg for Derek Carr.
Yeah, I just, if you trade the 20th pick, okay, I guess that's where you are. But you can't give up more than that.
No. I don't want to give up any valuable assets on the team for him either.
Yeah. The Carson Wentz one, I can buy into that a bit because you saw last year was just a bad year, but every other year of his career, he's been really good. And you're like, okay, this would be a situation of buying low. Sure, you got to pay him, but essentially you're kind of out from under that in 2 years. If he doesn't return to form. So like I could see that you're buying low. You could give up probably 2 seconds or a second and a third and get the guy. Because reports are that Philadelphia has not gotten an offer of a first round pick for Carson Wentz. And there's no way he's staying. They're saying, oh, we'll keep him. But they're like $80 million over the cap. And come March 3rd, so
There's no way they can keep him. I mean, there's just no way.
He wants out, and in 2.5 weeks, you have to pay him a $10 million roster bonus. So there's no way you're waiting. He's making it all the way to the draft. Like Derek Carr, if he gets traded, it's probably going to be closer to the draft night.
I agree.
But Wentz is going to have to be gone in the next 2.5 weeks. So if you identify him as the guy you want, then you've got Philly bent over, and take advantage. Honestly, I think Carr is the safer bet, but Wentz has way bigger upside. And
for sure.
My feelings are, of the two, I would rather go Wentz, because I think Carr just spins the wheels a little bit. You're still not going to be good as the Green Bay Packers, which means you're not good enough to win a Super Bowl. With Wentz, if Wentz comes back to form and your defense is healthy, I think you could beat the Green Bay Packers. I mean, clearly Wentz is not as good as Aaron Rodgers, but if Wentz returns to the form, he's still probably a top 10 quarterback in the league. And, with your defense, I think he makes you a very formidable foe.
Yeah, it's bigger risk, higher reward for Carson Wentz, where it's versus a lot of pay for something that's safe, not necessarily putting you over the top with Carr.
Yeah, Carr is going to be an improvement over what you've had the last few years, but by how much?
Yeah, and saying it's an improvement is not necessarily saying much.
So the other name that is looking at it more and more, it looks like the Washington football team is going to cut ties with Alex Smith. He will be out there. And is that a name you feel comfortable with? 37-year-old comeback player of the year? I just feel like that with the organization as it is, if you were to move on from, like if you were making a trade and you made Nick Foles part of it, I could see you bringing in Alex Smith to be the backup. But
sure,
I don't think with a head coach and a general manager feeling the fire in their seat, they're going to try to win with Alex Smith.
Right.
I think, and here's the thing is, there's a lot of puzzle, there's a puzzle piece or a puzzle that you have to put together for the 2021 season. And there's a glaring piece missing. That's the quarterback. And you have to figure that out to put everything back together. And that's what you do to get that quarterback really is going to shape how you finish the puzzle. That's 2021. Are you trading draft assets? If so, then how are you going to fill the holes that you have in your offensive tackles, adding wide receiver depth, adding some defensive depth, etc.? How are you going to fill those spots? If you sign a veteran, how are you paying for him? What money are you kicking down the road to get to him, or who are you cutting to make room? And if you draft somebody, are you going to try to trade up? Or are you going to wait to see if Mac Jones or Kyle Trask fall to you at 20?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there. It's hard when you're in this situation year after year.
Oh, absolutely. And it sounds like they're probably going to franchise tag Allen Robinson. But the question is do they trade him off of the franchise tag, or do they try to sign him to an extension? Because if they can't pay him on the franchise tag because that's $18 million.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and it's higher than the franchise tag for other players because the franchise tag is either like the average of the top 5 players at that position, or I think it's like a 20% bump up from what you made the previous year. So whichever is higher, so it'd be the 20% would be higher. So he's at $18 million for this coming year if he plays on a franchise tag. So obviously it's more beneficial financially to sign him to a long-term agreement, and better, probably less money per year, and be able to adjust what years that the money counts for in the cap. And the other thing is, even if you feel like, as fans, we're like, there was a lot of things he could have done better to be a number one receiver. The fact is, his stats were great with a terrible quarterback play in his whole time here. And two is, who picks up the production if he leaves?
That's a big drop in
Do
talent.
we remember what life was like before Allen Robinson was here?
Yeah, we were panning for Cam Meredith.
We had some terrible wide receiver play. I mean, as bad as quarterback play was in the city, the wide receiver play was on par. And Allen Robinson brought it back. And when you have a true number one receiver, it makes everybody else look better. Now, it obviously won't get as bad because I think Darnell Mooney's pretty good.
I like him a lot. I do.
Right now he's not a number one.
No.
And if he has to be a number two, you're like, okay, that's fine. I think the Bears still, even if with Allen Robinson, need to improve the wide receiver situation, because I think everything past Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney could be improved.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, Anthony Miller has turned out to be pretty disappointing, and you didn't really give much chance to Riley Ridley, so...
Yeah, so I think, like, unless you're going through a full rebuild, how in the world are you going to bring in a new quarterback and then not give him any weapons? It just seems like you can't let Allen Robinson go.
No.
Now, the other interesting thing that came up is a player became available in J.J. Watt. Now, listen. There's so many reasons why he won't be a Bear. The Bears would have to pay him.
Quite a few.
The Bears would have to pay him, and they just don't have the salary cap space.
No.
Number two is that he wants to go to at this point in his career, he has to want to go to a contender, right?
I would think.
So he's probably, and he's got another team in the NFL that has his brother.
I have that gut feeling he's going to wind up in Green Bay and he's going to find the fountain of youth again.
That's my fear. But the things that we have going for us is his wife plays sports here. He has ties to the city. And he went to Wisconsin, which is, it's probably, I'd have to GPS it, but I would think it's closer to Chicago than Green Bay, even though it's in the same state as Green Bay. But I think there is some possibility. I mean, if you're ranking teams, the Bears did make the playoffs last year. If you can sell him on, you do have a plan at quarterback, he might be more likely to come. But can you imagine a defensive front of Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, and J.J. Watt?
That'd be cool.
Like, you couldn't double team. Who the hell do you double team?
I'm putting chances at almost zero. I just don't see how they could afford him.
I mean, he's clearly not going to get anything near what he was getting.
Right, but still.
And if you do figure out that quarterback situation, so let's say that they can get a deal in place for Wentz, okay, and between John DeFilippo and Matt Nagy, they feel like they have a plan to get him back to his 2018-2019 form. Okay? And you get a long-term deal done with Allen Robinson where you defer a lot of the money towards the end of the contract. And at that point, then you go, all right, J.J. Watt, we've got a defense with Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks where you have protection in that line. You can just pin your ears back and be the guy. No, you're not going to get beat up on double teams all the time. And we've got a quarterback in place that can run our system. I think that becomes a lot more realistic of a seller or a buyer interest and seller, a mutual interest there, because he's like, okay, the offense seems to be there and the defense is already good. I can have an impact here without having to be beat up on the defensive front with double teams all the time. And you can borrow from Peter to pay Paul at this point, because you're like, okay, if this is the situation, you add J.J. Watt to that defense, they become instantly a top 5 defense, right?
Definitely in the top 10, no doubt.
I mean, statistically, I think they were like 11 last year. So easily top 10, probably top 5. And if you add Wentz and the protection that you saw at the end of last season. So, at least at least the protection that you saw from last season with the running game that you saw at the end of the season, and Wentz returning to form from 2017, 2018, 2019. That's an actual competitive team. That's a team that could win a Super Bowl.
I can dream. I don't think he's coming here. I really don't have any hopes he's coming here.
I'm not saying it is. I mean, like I said, Green Bay is a more, ideal. I mean, if you're him, that's probably a better spot for you. I mean, Pittsburgh has his brother, but I just don't know how they afford him because they're in a bad financial situation.
I'm almost counting on Green Bay getting him.
I mean, it seems the most realistic possibility, but I'm just saying is the fact that he loves this city, his wife plays here, and the fact that if you can figure out your quarterback situation, which is a big if, I think it puts J.J. Watt at least in the conversation of reality, even if it's a far less likely realistic situation.
Well, I guess one thing at a time, right? They got to figure out that quarterback situation.
I mean, we haven't figured it out since the 40s, but...
Yeah, right. Oh, boy.
But I did do my first mock draft. So Pro Football Focus now, in previous years I've used like On the Clock or some other ones where they're like mock simulators where they use draft needs and big boards to kind of predict what other teams will pick, and then you get to pick your team. Pro Football Focus now has one, and they allow trades in there. So I never proposed a trade, but if a trade was offered to me, I at least entertained it. So I did a mock, and my first one was with the number 20 overall pick, chose Elijah Vera Tucker, the offensive tackle from USC. 52nd pick, our second rounder, Jay Tufeli, the defensive tackle from USC. And then I traded the 83rd pick and the 205th pick to Washington for 95th and 124. The 95th pick, I took Jabril Cox, linebacker from LSU. 124 took Andre Sisco, a safety from Syracuse. 165, Robert Jones, offensive guard, Middle Tennessee State. 219, Trey Brown, cornerback from Oklahoma. 224, Kerry Angeline, tight end from North Carolina State. And 230, Drew Chrisman, a punter from Ohio State. Not a very sexy draft, but I think there's some guys in there. I mean, Elijah Vera Tucker, day one, comes in, starts at right tackle. Allows you to move on from the big oaf that you have over there now. More cost effective and probably better play out of it. Jay Tefeli right away becomes some depth because you're probably going to lose some of your defensive linemen in free agency. Jabril Cox automatically adds some depth in there for your inside linebacker. Andre Sisco right away at least competes for a starting spot. And then Jones is from Middle Tennessee State. He looks like he could be good, but at least he gives you time because you don't need him to start right away. You've got your inside probably filled, so it allows him some time to grow and be a backup. Trey Brown comes in that cornerback depth piece. Angeline, tight end. It gives you another young tight end to kind of work in there. And then Chrisman's a good punter. It allows you to move on from Mega Kick, who, has been okay, but not good enough that you're like, oh, man, I have to keep him. And the cost difference between your current kicker or your current punter and a rookie, is probably $1 million a year. Any $1 million you can find in this cap is probably a good thing.
Sounds like this mock has a lot of trying to save while being effective as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I went in there with a plan. Would like to have gotten a quarterback. And then when I did the mock, I think Trask and Mac Jones. I think 20 might be a little high for both of them, and they by 52 they were long gone. I was kind of watching if one of them made it to about 40. I'd have probably felt comfortable trading up to get one of them, but they didn't. Both went in the 30s. I think one went in the 20s and one went in the 30s. So I was like, it's too high to trade up. I was like, maybe I could have traded back. But honestly, the thing is, the Bears have the 20th overall pick in the first round. I pulled up the history of the number 20th overall pick in the NFL draft. This is the history. Last year was Kalavion Chason. Year before, Noah Fant. Year before, Frank Ragnow, Garrett Bowles, Darren Lee, Nelson Aguilar, Brandon Cooks, who's been good, but nobody wants to keep him for some reason. Kyle Long, Kendall Wright, Adrian Claiborne, Kareem Jackson, Brandon Pettigrew, Aqib Talib. There's not a ton of names that are like, oh man. So number 20 is like an odd pick where it's not up there enough to get like an elite guy. So it makes you feel a little more comfortable. Like, you know what? I could move on from that 20th pick and trade somebody if need be to get who I want.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's desirable enough where if you want to trade back and get a lot of value, pick up an extra second rounder or third rounder where you have more bites at that apple. I think that would be okay. In my draft, I would have, if there wouldn't have been a legitimate offensive tackle or quarterback at that number 20 spot, I probably would have traded back. But there was a tackle there. But if it was like, the best players available were a defensive tackle or a linebacker, I probably would have traded back and said, you know what? I'd rather recoup and have extra bites at the apple in second and third round and then try to force the issue with a defensive tackle or a linebacker that I don't necessarily need that won't impact me right now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So, I don't know. It's still early, but it would be nice for the Bears to be able to figure out that quarterback position, because from there, that's when you can start fitting all the other puzzle pieces together.
Exactly. Once you figure that out, then you can kind of work around it then. It's like that's like the big elephant in the room. And once that's out, you have room to work other things and move around.
What's funny is I don't know if you follow Cordero Patterson on Twitter. I guess you're sort of on there again.
I don't really use Twitter anymore, so no.
He's been actively recruiting players to the Bears, and he's not even under contract for the Bears, which is funny.
You think they bring him back?
I mean, it depends. How much money does he want? They can't pay him what they've paid him the last 2 years. He can't be $5 million a year.
If he took a pay cut to stay here, that would be really awesome, because I really like him.
If he took $3.5 million, I would say you have to bring him back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's beloved. He's great special teamers, and he actually recruits other players.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to not want him around.
I mean, he's a great special teamer, man. Like, he is really good. Not just bringing back kicks, but you see what he does on special teams. He's just all together. And you know what? He's a nice little gadget guy too. We've seen him make some nice plays.
Absolutely. He plays running back. He's your backup running back. You could put him in at wide receiver. He's versatile. I think you just need to use him more. But
yeah,
I think they sort of have to bring him back.
I'd be really disappointed if he went somewhere else.
I would too.
Because I'll tell you, if there was a signing that I absolutely just adored from the second it was made, it was Cordero Patterson when they brought him in before 2019. Because when he became a free agent, I said, Ryan Pace has to get this guy. And then he did get him, and it was great.
I mean, that's been a Ryan Pace, is when Ryan Pace identifies an issue, like, he goes all out and tries to, he doesn't fix everything at once, but he identifies it. So that year was, we need to get better at kick returns. So they went out and got Cordero Patterson. Last year was, we need to get better at tight end. So they signed Jimmy Graham and they drafted Cole Kmet.
Cole Kmet, yeah.
And so this year, I think you have to go quarterback. So he's probably going to take a big swing at it. But, you know.
Let's hope he actually hits something this time.
Oh, I know. You know what? I'm fine. If he's 1 for 4 in his lifetime at quarterback picking, better be the last one.
Yeah, right.
That's where we are with that.
Yeah.
All right. You want to finish up here with Hawks or Bulls first?
I don't really have much to say about the Bulls right now, to be honest.
It's obvious that there's improvement on the team, and you're seeing players from, like, star players talk about the improvement under Billy Donovan. It's just you can't find the consistency. That's the frustrating part.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they made 25 3-pointers the one game. That was awesome. That was absolutely awesome. And I think, like we said in the last show, Zach LaVine is all-star worthy this year. And then, you play the Clippers and you get absolutely crapped on by them. And, they drained all those threes the one game, and then the next game they're chucking them up at will and they're bricking and missing all of them. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of the growing pains for sure. You just wish there was a bit more consistency. And it's got to be tough being a new voice on the team in Billy Donovan, implementing a new system and trying to break old habits and bad former coaching, and then dealing with all the injuries on top of it. That marking injury is a real bummer.
And Wendell Carter is coming back to practice, I think, tomorrow for the first time. But I don't know when he'll be able to play. But at least he's coming back earlier than expected. Otto Porter's out for a while. It's guys have been decimated by injury, it makes it that much tougher to find consistency in your play. I was optimistic and hopeful that we would be seeing at this point a turning point of all right, even if we're not as good, we see the progression here. And instead of being more linear like we had hoped, I think we can all deal with a linear progression. We've seen more erratic, where it's up and down. Zigzag. And I think that's the toughest part, at least for me, and I'm sure for other fans, is watching these games and go, all right, one night we look great and look like we could beat anybody, and then the next night just look like hot doo-doo. It's tough to watch, and it's tough to project, because you're like, all right, I mean, how do we build our expectations off of that?
Right. It's hard because, you get really excited about a really good game they have one night, and then they just absolutely take a dump the next one. It makes it more frustrating to watch, but at least we're still more invested in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's clear that they're a much better team than they were last year. They compete. They look better, and we're more hopeful. It's at this point getting guys healthy, figuring out who are actual contributors going forward, and see what the trade deadline brings. The trade deadline, we're about maybe a little over a month away. So you're going to start in the coming weeks and we're already starting to hear trade rumors, and I think the Bulls have been linked pretty hard with Lonzo Ball. But you're going to start seeing more and more rumors, and I think the Bulls will be active. I think part of it to see, can they bring in pieces that they think could be beneficial to this team long term, and can they shed some of the big money that they have and move on and maybe get some draft picks for expiring contracts, etc.
Yep, we'll see.
And the only other thing I have to say is, I haven't listened to it yet, but Denzel Valentine dropped his release album, his debut album.
Oh, did he? I did not know that.
Yeah, so go to check out that. I hear it's terrible, but I have to listen to it anyway. I mean, would you expect it to be good?
Not really.
I mean, when was the last time you heard a basketball player be a good rapper as well?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But I think the best NBA player rap line would have to be when Shaq yelled, "Kobe, tell me how my ass tastes."
Well, that was a classic. I mean, come on. It was beautiful.
All right, so let's wrap this up with the Blackhawks.
Yeah, nice DeBrincat overtime goal the other night.
Yeah, I mean, so all right, we had a split. We had two game series against the Blue Jackets since last time we recorded. Ended up being split 1-1 with those games, but it realistically should have been 2-0 Blackhawks.
Yeah, that first loss against Columbus was rough.
Yeah, I mean, Lankinen looked great, and they were winning in the third period, and then just gave it up. And I think kudos to the coach for putting Lankinen back in, because you could have easily after that loss switched and started Subban the next game. And I think I know it sounds really cliche, but the fact that they were able to just rebound right after that was really good to see. Yeah, I think that was good, because you have two young goalies, fairly young goalies, and Lankinen, probably his second bad game of the season. I mean, his very first one was a bad one, but other than that, he's been great. He's really kept the Blackhawks in him pretty much every game he's started, and you get a bad game. and you don't want to lose his confidence or anything. So you throw him back out against the same team, and it comes back, and he has a good game. So, I mean, kudos for making that move, because the safe move probably is to start Subban, because Subban has been pretty good lately too. So that's probably the safer move. It's the harder move to start Lankinen again against the same team, and I think it's going to end up paying off in the long run.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. What I really liked was that they didn't hang their heads after that really tough loss, and they were just ready to get back out there. And, we could look at the Blackhawks. Oh, they've been around a while, but, look, most of these guys are pretty young on this roster right now. It's a lot of AHL rookie prospect guys. So, you could consider that loss against the Blue Jackets as a big learning point. And, I watched that whole game, and if you just looked at the raw numbers, you would have said, well, the Blackhawks clearly lost because they got heavily outplayed. I mean, they gave up almost 50 shots. But it was the fact that you had two goal leads in that game and still had a 1-goal lead with like 3 minutes to go, and you just coughed it up. I mean, they looked very dejected after that game, but they were able to get right back at it. And, all these games count. You're only playing who's in your division. So every game is precious, and they were able to rebound very nicely. It was good to see, and you just like to see them do overtime a little less, because when you go to overtime, even if you win, you're still giving the other team a point. So it'd be nice if we saw less overtime, but you know what? It's hard to complain overall about how they're playing right now, because when this season started, I legitimately thought they could be one of the worst teams in the league. And maybe they do. Maybe they go on a bad slump, but lately they've just been playing so much better than expected.
I think the thing is when you have a bunch of players playing gritty, tough hockey, and you get good goaltending, it keeps you in games. And here's the thing: is so many of their games have been 1-goal games. It just tells you that even if they lose, that they're competitive in these games. Even against teams that are much better than them, they're competing. That's a good sign. Do I think that they're a team that can compete for a Stanley Cup? No, but they're way better than the team that I thought they were going to be at the start of the season. I honestly, it was like, oh man, this team is tanking for the number 1 pick.
Right, and it looked like they were going to be like so borderline unwatchable that it was going to be almost Bill Wirtz mid-2000s-esque.
Yeah, and you look at the standings, and sure, there's game played disparities here, but the Blackhawks have the second most. They're tied for the second most number of points in the division, behind only the Lightning.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
And it's funny is last season, the top line that you saw during this shortened season was the line of Taves, Kubalik, and Saad. And 2 of those guys aren't with the team right now. One traded away, one, in whatever injury protocol. And this season, I think so far in the young season, the line that you're probably by far the happiest with is Kane, DeBrincat, and Suter.
Yeah.
That's a completely...
I think Kubalik is doing pretty well as well, but I agree.
I'm not saying as individual players, but I'm saying as a line. That line, Kane, DeBrincat, and Suter, has been really good. And it's crazy to think that in a year that you went to the playoffs, and the following year that your best line is 3 completely different players.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very, very true.
And you're seeing some really good improvement from Ian Mitchell and Nicholas Baudin.
Yeah, they finally got their first career goals, so congrats to them.
Yeah, so you're seeing some good plays from there. I can't really complain. it's been good hockey to watch, even when they're losing their competitive games. You don't. I mean, I think my hardest time with watching this team is when they're not in a game. It's just they suck. Regardless of the score, you're seeing the other team just completely dominate. But you're not seeing that with this team, and that's what makes it fun. Even when they're losing, you're like, okay, they're in this. They're competing. The defense is so much better than it was last season, and you're seeing, young guys competing here. You're seeing better goaltending than we expected. I mean, it's clearly not Corey Crawford level, but it's way better than what we expected when Corey Crawford left in free agency and then ultimately retired.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Subban is playing as well as he is, and Lankinen is the guy that's been our best goalie, is, I don't think anybody predicted that.
No, I certainly didn't.
I think we were all predicting that it would just be whoever was the least bad would start the most between Delia and Subban, and
that's what I was expecting, honestly.
And Delia is not even getting a chance anymore. And it's funny. I've seen some legit hockey, like Blackhawks bloggers, complain about that, and what's supposed to be for the kids. And I was like, well, I could see some degree, but not the goalie. Like some position you could see, but not the goalie position, because it's not like, Lankinen, Subban, and Delia are all like 1 year apart. It's like one's like 24, 25, and 26. So like they're all around the same age, and you're playing the ones that you think are going to be the best overall. And Delia is played the worst when he's got the chance. Lankinen has played the best, and Subban's played pretty darn good.
It's not like Delia hasn't had much time to prove himself.
Yeah, so it's the guys that are earning it. It's not like you're playing a 35-year-old goalie and not giving a kid a chance in this season when you're trying to give the kids a chance. That's a different story. If you're like, you know what, we're winning with a 1 year free agent goalie who's at the end of his career veteran, and he's playing hot, and we're riding that out. I get the frustration when you're like, well, we need to see what we have in this young kid. But this is a different case. Like Lankinen, like you have three guys that legit could be your future. Like those are your options here. And so you are seeing what you have in the future. Like if Lankinen plays like this, he's your future goaltender.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see the situation there. Like I don't see the issue. It's Delia had a chance. Like he had the shot at the early part of the season, and he didn't play well.
No, he didn't. And now you're giving it to Lankinen. I mean, and he's playing much better. So why not stick with that?
Yeah, it's not like you're putting in an old veteran and not giving a kid a chance. You're putting in a kid and not giving a different kid a chance. Like, all right, they're both kids. All three of them are kids, and you're giving them all. You gave them all a shot. The guy who had the least shot, who wasn't even supposed to get a shot, got a shot because the first guy sucked at his shot, and he's taken advantage of it.
Exactly.
So I can't buy. But let's see. Shaw's in concussion protocol. He's another one. We talked for ad nauseum in previous seasons about Corey Crawford and our worries about his long-term health. Andrew Shaw is another one.
Because didn't he miss most of last year due to that same issue?
Didn't he miss almost in all of last year?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, and now he's back in concussion protocol. It just at some point you have to have somebody step in and the NHL really needs an independent kind of medical arbiter to step in these situations and really talk to players about risks and benefits of making decisions, because NHL, much more than most other sports, when the season ends and you hear players, the things that they played through,
it's
unreal. And there's one thing, like, all right, long term, if you played an entire game with a broken leg, or a shift with a shattered pelvis, like, you're like, okay, that sucks, but is that long-term issue? Probably not. It's more short-term issue. These concussions, didn't Shaw, was Shaw here at the same time as Carcillo? They overlap.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Didn't you learn from Carcillo? Doesn't he his voice still echo somewhere, talking about, the detriments of what you can go through with brain injuries? He's been the rallying cry for these issues, not like, not necessarily he's gone through everything that some other players have, where you've seen suicides and drug issues, but he's been the voice, and I don't know. I just worry about Shaw, man. He's had some serious ones, so
yeah.
You hope for the best, but it's he's earned a lot of money, and you just hope he doesn't ruin future health for being able to play a little more hockey.
Yeah, for sure. It's always a concern when these things are, frequently come up.
And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was Kane had another three-point game, and he moved ahead of Jeremy Roenick on the list of all-time most number of games with 3 or more points by a U.S.-born player. So,
a very distinguished and specific list.
It's very specific, but you look at the list, is number 1 is Pat LaFontaine with 116. 2 is Mike Modano, who has been arguably the greatest American-born player of all time. 3rd is Joe Mullen. 4th, Patrick Kane. 5th, Jeremy Roenick.
And Kane still has plenty of hockey left.
Yeah, he does. So, by the end, he could be number 1 on this list. And sure, it's a very specific thing. It's not like, and it's only U.S.-born players. But when it's all said and done, you'd have to say Patrick Kane is on pace to be the greatest American-born hockey player ever, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He had 1,000 points by age 30, 31?
Yeah, it's going to be hard. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's going to be the greatest American hockey player ever. And what's going to be fun is at some point you're going to have to start looking at him, not just stats as far as American-born players, but stats in general.
Sure, absolutely.
So, I have said in the past, maybe you trade him, but man, I was dumb. That was a terrible thing. And don't ever listen to what I say, because that was a bad one. You can't. You keep him. He's good.
Stew yourself in marinara sauce and shame. You are sentenced to sticking your head in the Marty Havlat crock pot.
Yes.
You just stick your head in there and just.
I just lean back like you're in a salon chair, and when they wash your hair for you, I just lean my head back into the marinara sauce and massage it into my head. It's my scalp.
That's just right in your ear.
I've got the apron on so it doesn't get on my clothes, and I've got my head leaned back. It's got there's a hose attachment so you can suck the sauce from the bottom of the crock pot through like a spigot, and it sprays a spray nozzle, and I spray it on. Extra accessories here for our invention.
I love it.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope, I said my piece. I'm ready for pitchers and catchers to report this week.
Yes, and it's gonna be awful thinking about all these guys in the sun in Florida and Arizona while we're in 0 and below 0 degree temperature with 19 feet of snow.
We're living life well here in the negative wind chill and the snow.
You know, I was dumb and our patio table, I didn't put it in the garage before. And so now I'm going to actually go out tomorrow, and I went out there the other day with a regular like 12-inch ruler, and there's way more snow than that. So now I have to go out there with a yardstick and see how much snow is sitting on top of this table. It's got to be 20 inches or more.
Ugh, boy, that's brutal.
But that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn, however you listen. Hit subscribe. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. And thank you guys so much again. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on the plains.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.